Well, buckle up and get ready for a powerful episode. We're joined by a special guest, the superintendent of the Indiana State Police, who really takes on a lot of topics that we are facing as a profession. But this discussion really is a raw discussion on the circumstances that we face in this profession, but also the absolute critical need for faith in all that we do. Dive into this episode where we talk about a superintendent of the state police, a sheriff, and a servant of the people. Come on in and join us.
Well, hello, everybody. Here we are for another Remnant Revealed podcast.
You got that down?
I do. Yeah. Well, it's only been like 4 years and 89 episodes. You should have it down by now.
It is right.
Through voice issues, voice surgeries, and come back stronger. It's almost like Ed McMahon or something off of Johnny Carson's show.
You kind of remind me of him. Yeah.
We want to start out today by saying to all of you who are our precious friends and loved ones in Israel, we're praying for you day and night, and our heart is for you. This is a well sought after, hardly ever received cap from a police officer in Israel that we were blessed with, and just want to say thank you. We love you. We're praying for you. We know you guys are kind of sitting on some situations there, and our heart goes out to you. You keep doing what you're doing. Handle business. Those of you who know me well know that I'm talking to you. We don't mention names, but you take care of business and do what you need to do. I love it. One of my friends there said the other day when I was talking to him, I said, "Are you going to be in the bunker?" And he said, "No, this Jew don't hide." And he said, "Bring it on." So we're proud of you. We love you, and we're standing with you. We know many police officers were killed on October the 7th, and in that massacre, the whole police station's wiped out.
That is right.
But you don't hear the media say a whole lot about that.
But you and I got to spend some time with Israeli police officers in D.C. during the last police memorial.
Yes, we did.
We did the Jewish officer memorial there at the wall.
So you spoke at that.
I did. It was a great honor.
You read a scripture there, or a prayer.
Yeah, it was a great honor, and something that you don't take lightly when you're able to be in that.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot going on.
We have had.
And we've got more coming our way.
And we're headed for more.
Wanted to share with you, we just found out we're going to be having the opportunity coming up here in November to be going over to Central Illinois.
Yeah.
Going to be at the invitation of the Illini Lodge 17, FOP.
Lodge 17.
In Champaign-Urbana. We're going to be doing, they're going to host kind of a regional event.
Yeah.
Not just for law enforcement and not just for FOP, but public safety in general, fire, EMS, family members. They're going to be doing a first responders and family resiliency presentation, and I'm going to be speaking at that.
Oh,
so
cool.
Hopefully folks in Illinois, we got a lot of folks that watch and listen from Illinois. They'll be able to come by and participate in that. There's been plenty that's gone around with the advertisements, so come hang out with us and enjoy the evening.
How to stay strong in the midst of the battle.
Yeah, that's
resiliency.
Right. That is right.
Yeah. And today we have a absolutely wonderful, wonderful guest. And I've had the privilege, probably not as many years as you have, but I've had the privilege of getting to know him well. And he's spoken at our youth academy here.
Yeah.
And it's just watching and being around him, even in the scope of his work and what he does every day, just come to know him as an absolutely wonderful man. He wears a wonderful uniform and stands for excellent law enforcement. But not only that, he's just a great guy.
That is right.
Easy easy to like and easy to love. I want to, sure you know what this is.
I do know what that is.
Yeah,
I do.
so,
Thank you so very much. I thought
wanted
you were
to-
going to introduce Rick Snyder.
No, I was good. No. Oh, he's, I've wore out all my statements on him. I don't have anything else to say.
This is our good friend, Superintendent of the Indiana State Police,
Yes, sir.
Doug Carter.
Yes, sir.
Now, what I would say is we're going to get into your career and all those other things, but beyond all the fancy titles and remarkable work that you've done in a entire career of law enforcement, I think my favorite title for you is friend.
Yeah.
So
Back at you.
you have been a dear brother of mine. I think it's fair to say we've been in the trenches together for a while, and that is
More than one.
no exaggeration. And we've spent a lot of times kind of really looking after our officers, figuring out how to pick up the pieces and move forward after many tragedies that we've experienced together in law enforcement. And we've stood in many emergency rooms together. Even just recently, we did that once again. And I think the thing that I think is strongest in all of that is we've spent a lot of time in prayer together. And, for a lot of unfortunate and tragic reasons.
Sure.
But nonetheless, those are times and experiences that I know I'll never forget. So welcome to the channel. Welcome to the podcast. You watched the podcast.
I do.
Remnant Revealed. We talked about having you on here for quite a while. It's just been about making schedules work. But here you are in the flesh and ready to go. So welcome.
It's a
We're
pleasure.
so glad.
It's a pleasure. I really looked forward to this. I did look
you?
forward.
Awesome.
I did. And when I asked about what it was going to be about, and you said we're going to wing it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I expected from my dear friend. Rick
Yeah,
Snyder.
we always tell everybody we don't script these. They
Yeah,
always
good.
say,
I like that.
How much time do you guys spend scripting that out and then editing it too? Like
Yeah.
these aren't edited. They're recorded as we do them. And some people have suggested that we sometimes consider doing them live and let people comment during the show and all that kind of stuff, which could be cool. But
That'd be really cool.
yeah, so you get to see it from behind the scenes and experience it. But again, welcome to you. It's awesome to have you here. You know, I was just thinking about this. I think in all the guests that we've had, unless I'm missing something, I think you might be the first active serving officer we've had on the podcast.
Yeah, he would be the first active.
All the others
Oh my
have been
gosh.
retired, but
Yeah.
lengthy careers and all those
Yeah.
other things. But you're still going. After how many years?
We got you before you went
How
out.
about
man.
that?
Yeah.
How
You're
many
the
years
first.
have you been in law enforcement
40,
now?
40 in July.
40
40
in
years.
July. Wow.
But I grew up, my dad was a state policeman.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So
that's
I grew
all
up
you've
in
ever known.
Northwest Indiana. Yeah, so lucky guy. Luckiest
So
guy on
you
the
were
planet.
you were his ride along partner.
I was.
Probably a lot.
From the time I was a little boy, about 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that like watching him? I mean, just really being in the car with him and riding along with him as a child. What was that like?
My dad was my hero. It was.
Yeah.
You could sometimes the people that he worked with couldn't even see me over there. 'Cause I was hunkered down in that passenger seat, But very, very just wonderful memories of the Dunes Park Post up there at that time, which is just north of Valparaiso and
How many years did he do?
22.
22 years.
Yeah, and then in that era, that's
what you did.
That's what you
Yeah.
did. And then you went on, you did something else because you didn't make any money at all.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think his pension's $550 some a month.
Holy smokes.
So he passed away 6 years ago, but my mom is still well, so
That's
all's
right.
good.
That is right.
Yeah.
So 40 years in law enforcement. Not all of that's been at the state police, though.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
So I think what's unique about you is, and I want to talk about it a little bit, but you're not only the first active officer that we've had on the show, but it doesn't get any higher than your position in the state. And it doesn't just happen by accident that you get there, and talk a little bit about your career at the state police specifically. When did you start, and kind of how did you migrate through the profession and the job?
Yeah, I have absolutely no idea. It started with me coming out of recruit school. I started in July of 1984,
Okay.
and they told me I was going to Pendleton. I had no idea where Pendleton was. I think my dad might have had something to do with that because I had the desire to go back home.
Sure.
But he did not have that desire. He
Yeah.
knew that would not be not the best
Not
decision.
healthy for you. Right.
Yeah, start clean. And I was assigned to Hamilton County, which is the first county north of Indianapolis.
Okay.
And I was told what town to live in, which was Cicero. And it began. And
Yeah.
I spent 18 years working nights, weekends, and holidays, and I loved every single minute of it.
Is that right?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. And I met with a group of businessmen that wanted to talk to me, and as I'm listening to them talk, I finally said, "Look, I don't know what you fellas need, but I'm not really your guy. I might be able to help you, but I'm not your guy." So, just cut to the chase here, and they said, "We want you to run for sheriff of Hamilton County," and I said, "Nah."
Now, what rank were you at the state police?
I was a
when
master trooper.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Still working nights and weekends. My life was just
Now, here's an interesting thing. So I just share this. So for folks that don't know, that may not be from Indiana and specifically within the law enforcement community here in Indiana, our superintendent is very well known for. You could be working late shift, middle of the night on a traffic stop, and a squad car pull up behind you and back you up, and you turn around and it's the superintendent of the state police. Or you pull up on a trooper that's got a traffic stop, walk up, and it's the superintendent of the state police making the stop. That's not heard of much around the country, but you are well known for that.
Why
You're
wouldn't
a cop's
we?
cop
I mean,
and
why
still
wouldn't we?
so, right?
Yeah.
why wouldn't we? I drive a marked car. I'm not going to drive by. If somebody ever drove by
see
my
somebody-
daughter or my wife, I would be really upset. So
Sure.
That's right. That's right.
yeah.
And you are known for that. You've always stayed in a marked squad car, and you serve right alongside the women and men that you get the privilege to work alongside. So
It's awesome.
it really is pretty cool.
That
It
is
really
cool.
is. And I hear from officers all the time that say that. They'll call me, or we'll be talking at a roll call or something, and they'll mention that. And they'll say, "Superintendent was out again on the interstate and backed him up, or he backed me up, or whatever the case may be." That's pretty cool.
That's very cool.
The one of my favorite opportunities to ever do that was with Perry Wren.
Really.
An officer that we
16
lost in
officer,
Indianapolis.
Yeah. Violently killed, shot and killed in the northeast side of Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And he was helping a homeless guy that was intoxicated right there in Illinois, very close to Methodist Hospital. And it was pouring down rain, and Perry Wren was sitting on the park bench with him. And I stopped and got out of my car, and in the way Perry Wren was treating that man, it really truly affected me.
Really?
That was just unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't know him. I didn't know him, but I did after that night.
Yeah.
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 So you're, and interestingly, out of Perry's murder came this mantra for IMPD. We had a news report where somebody said that officers should have stayed in their car and he wouldn't have lost his life, which law enforcement, being law enforcement, responded very strongly to that.
Yeah.
And we really developed this mantra: we will always get out of our car.
cars. Yeah.
And, a lot of officers not only live by that, but some also die by that. But it's the commitment that we make. We don't step back from challenge. I think the last 4 years in our nation have kind of demonstrated that as well, right?
Yep.
You sure have.
And so I want to talk a little bit about that, but I don't want to lose sight of this. You were just sharing that you're a master trooper.
Mm-hmm.
So how many years had you been in when you had this conversation?
18.
18.
18 years.
And these guys are talking to you, and they say they want you to run for sheriff. So this is the interesting thing to me. You not only ran for sheriff, right? How did you make that decision?
Oh, gosh. Well, the short story is I went home and told my wife what they had suggested, and I never had any desire to do that. I never did. And my wife was a long-term ER nurse at the time and could walk shoulder to shoulder with most sailors on the planet Earth. She explained to me what she really thought about that idea, and it wasn't very positive. But, the more we got to thinking about it, I said, our daughter was 7 years old at the time, and I said, I'll tell you, I don't want to be one of those guys who looks back on my life and wonders, what would have happened if?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we went away for the night, and she said, you pick a jury of 12, and if any one of them, I want to prove that list, by the way, but if any one of them say no, even if they can't explain why, we're not going to do that.
Wow.
And I
Well,
said,
that's
that's a
an
great
interesting
idea.
way to do it.
It's a great idea. And needless to say, nobody said no. And by the time that campaign was over, they could have elected me if I was deceased. It wasn't about me. It was so much different. And January 1 of 2003, I left the state police on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving in 2002. One of the most difficult days of my entire career.
I bet. Man.
And I assumed that role, and I served there for 8 years.
So you're twice elected.
Yes.
And in Indiana, we have term limits on sheriffs, so you were termed out.
Yeah.
But, it's rather unique. So you achieved the top-level executive position for a sheriff, which, most in law enforcement would tell you is about as strong as it gets.
Yeah.
And then you do that for 8 years, but then you come back to the state police.
Well, especially in a county like Hamilton. It was the 5th fastest growing county in the country. And
that's massive.
there's so much Carmel, Noblesville, that whole area is just exploding. And I remember when it was relatively simple. So it was quite a journey. I worked with some extraordinary people during that period of time. And it was awesome to be able to focus on a community. And then I left and thought my law enforcement career was over. And this guy named Mike Pence had other plans.
That's right. That is right. So had you known then Governor Mike Pence? Had you known him really prior?
I didn't.
While you were sheriff or anything?
I didn't.
Well, how did you get the call?
I have no idea. I'm serious, guys. I have no idea.
I have no idea how that happened.
There was all kind. You know how speculation is. People speculate long enough, eventually they get it right.
Yeah.
And people were coming to me asking me about that, and I would say to them, look, I've met at that time candidate Mike Pence a couple of different times at events, but only in passing. We didn't spend any time together. But I loved the guy, and he was so authentic and so real, and I really enjoyed hearing him speak. He does a great George W. Bush interpretation, impression. Yeah. But you know how politics are, and I kind of played it off. But then it got a little bit more real as time went on, and into after November, after the general election, and I understand they're taking a peek at me. I really don't know how or why that ever happened, but I did call my dad and said, "Hey, Dad, guess what? I may have an interview."
That's incredible.
With the governor-elect.
I bet your dad was.
It was so cool. He got to spend part of the tail end of his life with me there.
That's
and
awesome.
I got a phone call one morning in November, and a gal said the governor-elect would like. That time he was the governor-elect. Would like to meet with you and talk to you about the state police. Would you be willing? And I said, yes, I would. And I said, when would he like to do that? And she said, about 4 o'clock today. And I said, my schedule's open.
It just opened up.
It just opened up.
Hey, I can't show up for that 4 o'clock. I'm the governor.
All right.
Yeah,
so I went to the State House, and I walked in this little conference room that I still spend time in today when I need to retroflect.
Wow.
In hard times. And there's this guy named Mike Pence sitting there on the end of the table, kind of like I am, and I'm sitting over here. And by the time the interview, more of a conversation like this, it really was. It really was like this.
Wow.
He's sitting knee to knee with me, and when you're nervous, that little guy in the back of your head, don't screw this up or some such.
Yeah, somebody says
something
that.
Like
I've
that.
never heard anybody say that before.
Yeah, I mean that's the clean version.
Yeah.
And that little voice in the back of my mind is saying, don't. He's not going to pick you, number one. But this guy knows your name, and he could be the president of the United States one day.
Yeah.
So don't screw this up.
Uh-huh.
And it was just it was about faith and leadership and servanthood and my family. He wanted to know all about my family, and it wasn't a job interview, which is what I loved about that guy.
So
a lot of people don't see that in him. But
see, that's an interesting point. You weren't talking policing strategy and policy.
No.
You were talking these big picture issues of character and leadership and
everything else comes.
Faith. And
yes. It was awesome.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that right there? Everything else comes from that.
Oh, I mean that's the very base of what we build our lives on, right? And if you can't pretend to have those, and either you do or you don't. And I've learned that my main priority and responsibility is culture. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. That's why I always wonder how a guy like me got here.
Yeah, same here.
But I care deeply about other people. And can I make a spreadsheet in Excel? No, I can't. But I know what the end result needs to be. Right?
Yeah.
So I know how to get there. So
it's important, though, because a lot of folks in law enforcement, policing, management, not everybody gets that.
Right.
Yeah. There are many officers out there that are working for folks, even not like a personal attack, but just a professional observation. There's a good number of law enforcement executive leaders that really fall into the trap of believing that good leadership is policy. Good leadership is discipline. Good leader, and by discipline I mean in a punishing kind of way,
Right.
Not discipline so that you never have problems, but that's how you know you're supervising is by your disciplining. And I don't hear you saying that.
Oh, I would never believe that. No one could ever convince me that that's true.
Yeah.
That dictatorial style does nothing but create an imbalance. And we're asking these people to die for their communities.
Come on.
We got to stop it. We've got to stop it. And there's a certain level of accountability that has got to be there. Discipline sucks. Internal investigations suck.
Yeah.
But that's just part
gotta
of this.
do it, though.
And our communities deserve it.
Yeah.
Right.
I read a quote, I believe it was a quote of yours that I loved very much, that you talked about the 3 principles that you've operated by in your own life. And it was integrity, loyalty, and community.
Yeah.
Integrity, loyalty, and community.
Yeah.
And even from the stories, the short little story points that we've made this far in this podcast, you can see from pulling over and backing an officer up when you're the superintendent or you're the sheriff, or to being very, that's a loyalty to your brothers and sisters who wear the uniform and do this job every day, to driving a marked car, but also the integrity of your life. And I, for one, as a member of the community, of course, as a pastor and somebody who works, tries to work faithfully in some of these other issues of our community, have seen you at many community opportunities to stand and speak for the community, and have always appreciated that about you. And so, how did you come about to those 3 principles in your life, to guide your life by that?
Well, it starts with who we are internally, and I think the integrity piece of this is so very important. I think it's oftentimes used as a buzzword with people, but it's real. It can't be something you pretend.
And where do you think that comes from when it's real?
Oh, from your heart and your soul and your belief in God.
Yeah.
No question about that.
No question.
No question about it.
Yeah.
And it should be ever present. You shouldn't have to talk about it.
That's a great point.
That's a great statement.
You know,
Should
many of
be
those
ever
other
present. Yeah.
leaders that we just referenced,
Yeah.
they spend a lot of time talking about it.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is your actions and your leadership
Yeah.
should just convey that and bring that to the surface,
Yeah.
where you're not having to talk about it.
You
It's just
shouldn't
part
have to.
of your culture, as you
Yeah,
say.
you should have to talk about it, and it should be an expectation. And that's where the discipline comes in. But discipline shouldn't be a surprise.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes it is. Sometimes it's personal. Sometimes it's vindictive. Shameful for anybody that chooses to do it
That
that
does
way.
that. Yeah.
The loyalty piece of this, I think loyalty is really, really important for a number of reasons. But first and foremost is we're loyal to something other than ourselves, and we get that. People that look funny like me today, no matter the color of their shirt, understands that loyalty. And if it's to yourself, then you probably ought not be here. And we drill that into our recruits, and we drill that into people over time. You can pretend to have it, but it's pretty obvious when you don't.
Yeah, there's plenty of opportunities that show
Yeah.
whether you do or you don't.
Absolutely.
right.
Right, and that's the part that a lot of folks who are trying to fake it, they don't understand that there's going to be circumstances that arise where it'll be very evident one way or the other,
No question.
and you can't hide it. So
Right.
the best part is to be a practitioner of it from the beginning.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I've seen so many people that have made decisions. A guy named Mike Fogarty. You remember Mike Fogarty? Taught me a very valuable lesson about living. And he was the Coleman police chief when I was soon to become the sheriff of the county. And he said people make 2 kinds of mistakes, one with their heart and one with their mind.
that's right.
And if they make the mistake with their mind, generally speaking, they were trying to do the right thing but missed the mark.
Yeah.
But if they did what they knew was wrong at the time, they made a mistake of their heart, and it's unforgivable.
Yeah, you
It's
know,
unbelievable. I always
That's a
remember
great-
that.
yeah.
And I thought, this can't be that simple.
it really is.
It is.
It
I
is.
tried to
It really
prove
is.
him wrong. And if Mike Fogarty's listening to this, Mike, thank you. It changed my
Yeah.
life when you said that.
That's
It's
good.
funny. I have that conversation all the time. through FOP and representation and all those things. It's one of the things that I talk to police leaders about all the time. Is this a mistake of the head or a mistake of the heart? And there is a big difference.
I love mistakes.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
I love it when people acknowledge them.
again.
I love when people make mistakes.
Sure.
But don't make it intentional. You have to ask yourself what you're about to do is right or wrong. It's wrong every single time.
That's right.
Right.
Every single time. So I love mistakes.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
we're
'cause
imperfect people.
They're trying.
They're trying.
They're doing something.
They are.
Right.
They are.
So a lot of folks know Mike Pence as the Vice President of the United States. You knew him as governor-elect and then governor and worked right alongside him.
I did.
So I'm guessing from your meeting, he hired you.
You brought us right back again.
Yeah.
I got the phone call, I think on the 28th of November, something like that. And he told me when we left, he called me. He said, I will make this call myself. Well, either way, whether I've selected you or whether I didn't. And my phone rang. I didn't look at it. I picked it up and I answered. It was Doug Mike Pence. And he says the call was 10 or 15 minutes. I don't remember it being that long. We made small talk for a few minutes, and then he said, I would like for you to become the 20th superintendent of the Indiana State Police. Do you accept? And I didn't know what to say. I was completely speechless. And he said, I'm assuming by the silence you say it, that means yes. I'll never forget it.
You fainted for a minute. Could your wife please answer the?
Yeah. It was unbelievable.
That's awesome.
And I had no idea what was about to happen in my life. But
What was that like telling your dad?
oh, it was so emotional. It was just.
Yeah.
We never dreamed this. We never dreamt that big that I'd get to do this. Never in a million years. Never in a million years.
Do you remember what he said when you told him?
Silence, just like me. Yeah, it was a cool moment with
That's
my wife.
a cool moment.
We found out where our daughter was, so we went to the house where she was visiting some friends, and we didn't know him at the time where she was, other than just acquaintances, and barged right in there, and it was so cool.
Your dad.
12 years ago.
Oh, and little girls, of course, dote on their dads.
Oh, my
I mean,
gosh, it's awesome.
And to tell your daughter,
Yeah.
your dad's going to be the next Indiana State Police Superintendent.
Now, I caught the car, and then I didn't know what to do with it.
Is that right?
Right, yeah. That is right. Now, so that means how many years have you been the superintendent?
It'll be 12 at the end of the year, the longest in our history.
Wow.
That's what I was going to say.
The
So
longest.
12 years, 2 different governors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not many.
Yeah, Governor
can
Holcomb
say
has been
that.
wonderful to us. He's been
That's good.
really wonderful to us for the last 8 years.
And how have you seen the shift between what and how things were when you started to how things are 12 years later?
No, we don't have time.
Yeah. That's to even have to say that. To even say that is mind-boggling.
I have been so fortunate, and to be able to work with some of the just consummate professionals, not just from the ISP, but I've got an amazing relationship with IMPD, and I'd say that whether Rick Snyder was here or not.
Yeah.
And the things that we've been through, they have multiple chiefs over that period of time, and all of them brought something really special to here and to us. And I've learned from them and have been able to take those lessons out to rural Indiana.
That's awesome.
We have really 3 kinds of policing in this state. The rural, which is really significant.
That's
where
right.
We have to have troopers in rural Indiana. To the urban, which is the city of Indianapolis, and then the combination of those two on the continuity, the counties that have continuity to large cities. So I think one of the most significant events early on for me was Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and how it had such a profound effect on policing at that moment in time. And I go back to 1988, 89 with Rodney King and O.J. Simpson and all the ripple effect that happened to policing over that period of time. And I talk about that all the time like a broken record, but I think it's real. And we own some of this. We own some of it. And I sent some people over to Ferguson, Missouri during that Michael Brown event because I just to sit on the sidelines and kind of watch what's happening here because so much had changed, and we don't want to repeat history, quite frankly. And
well, that's
we
good
learned
leadership.
we learned a lot from that. Man, am I glad we did? Am I glad we did? And because we never would have thought what was about to come.
Right.
So you think about that. You fast forward, and from then you fast forward, but from now you rewind to, especially 2020, right? I mean, would you agree that 2020 is just a complete dividing moment in the profession.
As significant as any in our lifetime, and probably as significant as any in any future lifetime. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
I do.
You know, I say that
That's
to
huge.
especially folks that have retired, even recently, even post 2020. But the amount of change and the volume of change in the profession. I tell people that if you've retired more than 6 months ago, you wouldn't recognize many aspects of the job. The basics are the same.
That's right.
But with technology and just the demands and the pressures, there's always been pressure in the profession, but very unique times. It's so rapidly evolving that it's very hard for folks not to start to feel overwhelmed. And I think that has driven some of the departures from the profession.
No question.
Yeah,
about it.
no doubt. Yeah, I would say.
I had a disciplinary issue recently, and it made me realize my view in the front of that car. I don't have any idea what it is anymore. I used to have a pretty good idea what to do in the event of but not anymore. Why?
Yeah.
Because of that cockpit.
Yeah.
There is so much coming at these guys and gals, and everything's instantaneous.
Oh yeah.
Whether it's flock, whether it's trying to catch up to something that flock caught, or the multitude of things that they can get on that laptop and that screen inside that car. There's a lot going on in there that I can't understand. I'm not smart enough to do that anymore. The things they can do on that laptop inside that car. So it does, Rick. You're right. I so appreciate you saying that. And I've said to people, and it's really upset them, if you weren't a policeman prior or post May 20th of 2020, you have no idea what this is about anymore.
You know, that's really true.
Wow.
It is
and
so
it,
true.
And it can offend coppers and
It does.
retired
Yeah.
coppers
It does.
who hear that. But I always reiterate it because what I say to them is current active officers, they need you so badly right now. They need that support network and the strength that, you know, the folks who plowed the ground that we stand upon, the strength that they can bring to them in that moment. And talk a little bit about that. You were the superintendent in the year of COVID, the riots, the country seemingly coming apart at the seams. What was that like, big picture wise, from the top seat?
Yeah, protecting the governor's house, making sure.
And you got not
that's
just
crazy.
the capital city, you got a whole state.
The whole entire state.
You know, I beat myself up when those kinds of things happen because I ask the why. And hindsight's 20/20. You can look in the rearview mirror and think, geez, I'd have done that. I'd be a billionaire.
Right. Yeah.
But I worried about the perception of the next generation after me.
Yeah.
What do I have to do? I'm 62 years old. What do I have to do right now to change the trajectory of violence, of hate, of bigotry, of white and black and brown, and who you love and who you, how do I do all
that's right.
that? And I realized that my mission and focus is going to be continuity and consistency, which in my opinion equals stability. So I'm not going to change this uniform. I'm not going to change it.
Right.
I'm not. And I've taken a lot of heat over that. Because I think our citizens deserve stability, and we only get there by, if you see me in Indianapolis or me in Posey County, Indiana,
You're the same.
I'm the same guy.
Yeah.
And that's been a really difficult. Tattoos,
That's a good
beards,
Oh yeah.
all
of
light
that.
uniforms with all this stuff hanging off of them. Again, young policemen hate me for saying that or
But
talking
think
about
it. Think about how the pendulum swung back. We said we got to do tattoos, you got to do beards, you got to do all this to.
And it'll solve the recruiting problem.
It'll solve the recruiting problem. What else were we told? You'll relate better to the community that you serve, and it's a positive.
Yeah.
Well, now look at what's happening in the profession.
Right.
We're swinging back the other way, saying maybe we went too far with some of these things.
And that's why I thought that during those periods of time, I don't know what to do, but I'm going to do what I think's right. I remember when COVID first hit, I stayed downtown. I stayed downtown, one, because I didn't want to take whatever I might have been around home, which was a silly thing to think now. But
boy, you did then.
I was the only person in the Courtyard Marriott there on Washington Street. The only person.
Only person in the whole building.
In the whole hotel. And I wanted to be there so that I could live independently and be able to not get sick and die. I mean, it was a crazy period of time. And I thought at that time that this is the right thing for me to do.
Sure.
Or if you got sick and died, you weren't taking that home.
Exactly.
And that's people
right,
forget
right,
that our officers.
Right.
I always say this. One of the memories that I have is when that first happened. Of course, you know what you know now.
Yeah.
But when that first happened, I just remember you would go into roll calls and people were like, you could just see it on them, and they were just kind of shrugging their shoulders, and it really was like there was this expectation that we're probably not going to make it through this.
There was.
And this is what I say to people.
But they were still there.
And none of them left.
None of them left.
None of them.
God, I love that.
Yep.
And we had guys and gals too that went and stayed. The hotels would offer,
Right.
if you want to stay here, you can. And we had some of them living in other hotels downtown,
Yeah.
living in campers in their driveway
Yeah.
because they didn't want to take it into the
Right.
home.
Right.
But they could see their family from a distance, and then they would suit up and show up and go back to work the next day.
Yep.
And then you would go on these runs,
Yeah.
and it would be dispatched that way.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
known COVID exposure, this,
Right.
that, and the other.
Yeah.
So you got to remember, in those first days, that was almost like you thought a death sentence.
Oh,
And people say, "Well, what did you do?" They
went.
responded.
you went anyway.
And then you'd have firefighters show up with all kinds of masks and gear and breathing apparatus and all this to protect themselves. And
There's a
we didn't
policeman
even
standing
have
there.
enough little paper
That's right.
masks to give them.
No.
Yep.
I remember we gave IMPD gave out two. We had one or two N95 masks, and
Right.
they literally told our officers at that time, these are single use only.
Yeah.
You can't reuse them. So really be highly selective on the run you wear it on.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so figure that out. Now, I got COVID from a run. A death entered to help the family. And then coming out, I was met and said, "Oh, Chappie, we meant to tell you. We meant to tell you.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
She had COVID." I'm like,
You'd have gone
Dude,
anyway. You
yeah.
would have
What are
gone
you going to
anyway.
do?
You're going to go anyway.
So we go anyway.
God bless you.
Got COVID.
Yeah.
Took the next run after I got better.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Because that's just what you do.
That's what you do. If
Like-
not us, then who? Not us, then who?
Yeah.
And think of it, that was just the beginning of that year.
Oh, my gosh.
It was just the start.
That was before May 20th.
That's right.
You'd hug an officer, and they would say, or go talk or pray with an officer, and they'd say, "Hey, Chappie, I've been in. Come here, man.
Yeah,
I mean, what are you going to do?" That's what they're doing every
If
day.
it gets me doing this, I'm all right with it.
Yeah, that's what they're doing every day.
Yeah.
They're going in to take care of people and help people every day. So
And Lord knows we put a lot of names on the wall from that. And but I think it's just a testament to our profession. And that was one event.
Yeah. You know, you guys are making me think about things I don't normally think about. You've got the ability to do that every time I talk to you.
yeah,
It's
He's
coming from you as
dangerous.
well.
Yeah.
You know, we had an opportunity. I wish we maybe would talk more about that, but we had an opportunity during these very, very difficult times to maybe change where we found ourselves today, whether it's geopolitical, whether it's how we think about society, whatever it might be, because we went through a historic period of time that we haven't been through in over 100 years.
Yeah.
What's the difference from that to 9/11? We were a unified nation.
Yes, we were.
And that's when just shy of 3,000 people were killed that day. Not demeaning that at all. But as a country, we've gone through so many other things since that period, and we don't seem to get better from it.
We don't have the unity.
We don't. No. We don't. It should scare every single American.
No, it was made to divide. It was absolutely made
Yeah.
to divide. To me, one is an attack of an enemy from without to within.
Yeah.
The other is an attack of an enemy from within that attacked within. And it was the attack to divide. I remember the governor standing and stating when we were trying to bring people back together, even where church was concerned. Yeah. Let's let churches start meeting and see how they do. Pastors I was one of them. I'm not gonna let people go to strip joints and beer joints, and you tell me we can't have church and serve
Right.
God and worship God and sing and pray.
Yeah.
And so we're working to gather people together. And the governor, which I so appreciated his statement, he said, let's let the churches, if they want to meet, let's let them meet and show us the way. Now, there were others in the community that got angry about that and said he's trying to kill us all.
Yeah.
Because he knows that COVID attacks us more than anybody else. And I have a lot of friends I called. I said, you're wrong on this one.
Mm-hmm.
The church should be at the forefront of this.
Absolutely.
Those who believe in the power of God and prayer, we should be leading our state, our community, our nation to say, look what God can do. He's the way. Let's get together and which we did.
Good.
There are many of those churches today, shuttered, closed, broken out windows.
Is right.
Their congregations never came back.
What's another example of what we were talking about? There's going to be these opportunities that come along where you rise or fall based on them, and you can't see them coming.
Right.
So the preparation is the daily consistency in your compass and how you're handling business day to day. Same thing applying in policing. Now you're again, I keep saying it. It probably, maybe it wears thin with you, but you're the top dog for the state of Indiana.
I carry the most weight. How about that?
You do, right? You got the most. So when that individual officer is carrying that weight, which is tremendous, if you're doing your job right, your role right, you're carrying all those officers on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that as it transitioned into the riots of the summer and the violence that we've seen since then. Violence in our communities, but also surging record levels of violence directed at law enforcement. Yeah. What's that been like?
Well, there was a spot that I always loved on the east side of the State House, and I'd go there late at night when I would as I would leave. And I loved looking east from the State House down Market Street to the monument. And for those that have been in Indianapolis, they know what that monument. I mean, that's right. Everybody in the world knows that, right?
Monument Circle.
Yeah, and I loved it. It was beautiful. It was at night. It was serene. It was quiet. It was peaceful. You didn't see much happening there. To think of the history associated with the monument back, 135 years ago, 140 years ago, and all that people would have seen that I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Well, then fast forward to the weekend after George Floyd, to the first Friday and Saturday after the George Floyd incident where he was killed, murdered. Excuse me. I had the same view, but it was a view outside the same doors.
Wow.
That was full of tear gas and smoke and gunfire and dumpster fires and squealing of tires and rhetoric and hate and disgust and having water bottles with urine in them thrown at us and people saying things to us that we never, ever could have possibly imagined.
Yeah.
It was, I can't look at that anymore. I can't look at that view anymore from that spot.
Right.
Without thinking of that.
Without thinking of that. And I wonder, I remember standing on that limestone one afternoon and thinking, what in the hell happened to us?
Yeah.
What happened to us? Those were a defining moment for us. And I look at it as an opportunity. We can't change the fact that it occurred.
That's right. But no matter who says it didn't and it was a peaceful protest.
Shame on every one of them.
Oh, my Lord.
Shame on every single one of them. And shame on every single community in America that didn't prosecute them.
That's
shame
exactly
on them.
right. Yes, sir.
And that was an opportunity for us, not only as a profession, but more importantly as human beings.
Yeah.
To hit the reset button. I use the analogy all the time, the Etch-a-Sketch when I was a kid. I love that thing, and I'd shake it up.
Shake it, yeah.
And then you clean the slate. You clean the slate. And we had an opportunity to do that. We didn't do it very well.
Yes, we did.
We didn't. We had many, many opportunities. And a guy by the name of Ed Flynn from Milwaukee PD changed, again, a very important statement.
I know Chief Flynn.
I want to meet him one day because what he said changed my life.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know you didn't know him.
I did not, but I saw him.
Wow.
And I remember him saying, this is on the heels of Michael Brown, when he was a chief up there. He was being criticized for the way his agency responded to, I believe, the murder of an 8-year-old little girl. And he was very passionate. And he was walking out of his office going to a crime scene, if I remember correctly. But he stopped.
I remember this clip.
And he turned around and said, our profession is not without sin.
That's right.
It changed everything for me because I was paying such close attention to what occurred in the late 80s, and I was a young policeman at the time. in L.A. and then again in L.A. in the early 90s with O.J. and all those things that happened and
Right.
how it affected all of us. And I'm thinking, gosh, we can't let history repeat itself. We have to acknowledge that we do have racial bias. We have to acknowledge that we don't understand disparate cultures. We can't be expected to, but we can try.
But we can try. That's right.
And we had all those opportunities there, and many cities across this country have never gotten better.
See, and that's the thing I think we miss is, a lot of times when I'm going different places in the country and getting to speak to officers, their families, all those other things, I keep raising the issues, especially through that time period, because I think the typical manner of the way we do things anymore as a society is once we get through something, we dust ourselves off and we go back to our separate corners.
Right.
And wait for the next controversial, tragic event to occur, and we come back out again in friction.
And we wonder why.
And we wonder why.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we
You're
never
right.
take the
You're right.
time to truly reflect on what we've been through. And a lot of it is it's still so fresh to people, they don't want to go back to that. They don't even want, like you were saying.
I think you're right.
I can't see it the same way anymore. And so you don't want to go back and stand there because that's what you see. But
It was
think-
trauma.
But collectively, we have to have some of those reflective moments together.
Yes.
And I think one of the most powerful questions any of us can ask around a table like that is, what part of this do we own? But we all have to ask that question. And I think from that comes healing. From that comes growth. And I just, I think about somebody like you that was so well respected in the profession. You've been a law enforcement leader for all these years. You're starting to wind down your career. Anyone who's doing the job right, their goal is to leave it better than the way they found it.
Yeah.
So, how do you foresee us moving forward on that front?
I think we're in big trouble.
Do you?
I think we're in big trouble. And I'm disgusted with Republicans and Democrats, quite frankly. But if we don't have some level of reflection on what we've done and what we've done correctly, what we haven't done correctly, then I think our democracy is in question. I really, really, truly believe that. You both have mentioned, and I think I did too, the riots and the protest post George Floyd. If we don't hold people accountable, it's no different than raising a kid, right?
Right.
If we don't hold people accountable that don't want to live under a norm of accountability, that'll breed an equal chaos.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
And by the
what's
way,
happened.
what I hear you saying, woven throughout all of this, is that includes ourselves as well.
The person you see in the mirror, don't blame somebody else.
That's right.
The person you see in the mirror.
The first principle of leadership is you got to lead yourself first.
We anecdotally, quick story, we took over the Gary Police Department for 18 months. And it was probably one of the most important projects we've ever done as an agency, and I know it was one of the top 5 for me because nobody up there looks like me. And I've tried to really get uncomfortable with people because I believe you can't hate up close. I really, truly do believe that. And I'd get off Broadway, and I would get on side streets, and I would stop and talk to people dressed like this. It was unbelievable to me how wonderful they were.
Yes, sir.
Kind. Didn't look like me.
Yes, sir.
Caring.
Yes,
Didn't
sir.
look like me.
That's right.
All they want is hope.
Supportive.
Yeah.
Supportive.
Yes.
They want hope.
They want hope.
And that made me realize that we can be better.
They
we
want-
really can.
They want hope, and they want to be loved
They
like anybody on the planet wants to
And
be
live
loved.
in peace.
People want to be loved. I said this one time to some officials. It's not about economics. It's not about how you were born. It's not even sometimes just about culture. It's about love and hate.
Yeah.
You love people that look like you, and you hate people that look differently. So you do everything you can for those you love, and you resist those that you hate.
Agreed.
And that's how we get in these situations. It's very basic.
It is.
It's very biblically simple. You love or you hate. And you react or you act based off of one of those characters of love or hate.
Right.
You'll just do enough to get the people you hate by, so you get a vote or you get whatever, but you'll do everything you can for those that you love.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we love each other, period?
Exactly.
And do what's right for each other, period? If it's right for you and me, and how we look, it's right for those who may be a darker hue.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line is we're all human beings.
Right.
We all came from the same gene pool. Every one of us are brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
It's the surfacey area that's the most shallow depth of relationship you can get to. Because every one of us could exchange an organ with another human being who has a different color skin.
Right. Right.
Skin color is the most shallow level of relationship there is in the world. So why do we make most of our decisions, most of our expressions, most of our restrictions and all the other things of life based on such shallow? Well, that ought to tell you how shallow your relationship is. Mm-hmm. Well, where's your heart? Yeah. What part of you do you love by, do we say, right?
You know, it's interesting that you say that, Pastor. And I think we've become so accustomed for somebody else to fix our problems that we don't take the responsibility ourselves. And
thank you.
And we expect that to come from the outside in, but the inside out's where the strength is, and with those that you have influence with. I mean, I because of the position I sit in, I have tremendous influence, and I try very hard not to squander that. I try to be in a good mood. I try to say good morning. I do all of those kinds of things inside out, so we can influence the perception of reality.
That's right.
With the way in which we act,
good.
how we
That's
act, how we talk,
good.
how we treat other people.
Yes.
Well, you know, everything that you guys are both saying takes me back to something you mentioned at the beginning of all this. And that was the example of a law enforcement officer working and speaking life into the situation of this homeless guy sitting next to him on a bench.
B. Perry Rand.
I never heard you say.
B. Perry Rand.
I never heard you say what color the officer was, what color the homeless guy was, because it didn't matter. What you were speaking to was the humanity involved in it. And I think if I'm doing this right, what I'm taking out of what you're saying is if we don't get humanity back into what we're doing as a society and start seeing the heart issues that are involved in all of this, it's a recipe for disaster.
Unrecoverable.
Yep.
So that's really the fundamental fork in the road that we're at. And that, quite honestly, that's why we're being so deliberate in this podcast and what we talk about, bringing this biblical perspective to the policing that we do, because that's exactly what we're talking about, which is the heart and the spirit that we're coming at this from. You know, in law enforcement, folks from all different walks of faith come to the table, right? But I know for a fact that you're a strong Christian, strong Catholic, strong follower of Christ. How has that impacted your career? Do you think you would have had the same type of career had you not had that fundamental, those fundamental principles in your life of faith, of love, of compassion for your fellow man?
You know, my answer might surprise you, Rick, because I'm struggling with my faith.
Yeah.
Mass is very peaceful to me. The body of Christ is very important. But over all of these years, the death, dying, destruction, hurt, pain, and sorrow have taken its toll on the why of all that.
Yep.
And I'm not ashamed. I'm reaching out for some help to try and understand why. Why is that? I'm not the same guy I was before. But I think that level of introspection has to happen. It just has to happen. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my faith. I would not be here. I again, like you said, I was born and raised Catholic. I went to Catholic schools. Lost my way for a while. Came back, and my wife is a devout Catholic, and she goes to Mass 3 or 4 times a week, and I love her for it, and she's able to help me a lot. But at this point in my life, I need somebody else to help me too. And I'm looking forward to having that base. That's why I appreciate you. And we talk all the time. Pastor, he'll send me and oftentimes I don't even respond to it because I don't know what to say.
Right.
But he sends me these bleeps, and maybe a sentence, maybe two. And every single time I look around, I'm thinking, where are you? I needed that.
Yeah.
I needed that because I know it's real. But
that's awesome.
I could sit here and tell you that it's all wonderful and great, but it's not.
Well, I think
it's not.
Think about it. Officers, their families, young officers, seasoned officers, those that have retired, anywhere in the spectrum of the profession, and those outside of law enforcement. I think there's a lot of that going on.
I think there is.
Well,
and I think it's powerful to hear somebody in your position being willing to expose themselves enough to say, "Now I'm struggling on that front myself." Because if you are,
right,
it's not as hard for me as a young patrol officer or that spouse who is really questioning their loved one even doing this job to say, "I'm having that struggle too."
Yeah.
Every character in this book
struggled
that we read about and we uphold, and that especially in the Catholic Church, there's statues and icons and stained glass windows, gold emblems and gold statues and all the things that we look at in Christendom as our most holy faith fathers who started the first church in the century that it started. Every one of them struggled with their faith. Every single one of them. From the Old Testament all the way through the New Testament, the stories are about struggling with your faith and finding that faith at a different level, or finding it for the first time through Jesus Christ and God the Father. And
Pastor, I can look back at the moment in time where I started to question it, and I hadn't thought about it till you just said what you said.
Yeah.
And that was when I had a young trooper named Bo Stephen was killed in a car accident trying to get to a domestic situation, and I remember getting up there and lifting his body out of that car, and it was this. It was this exactly. Not pristine though. Mm-hmm. With his shift mates off to the side, just sobbing.
Sure.
And that's the first time in my lifetime that I really truly asked the why. What have you done to cause this level of pain? And I've not gotten past it, but I'm working at it. And then several events have occurred after that Rick and I have been a part of. So anyway, I remember the moment in time when it really struck me, and I asked why.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you a good story right here.
Yeah.
I don't know that it'll answer every part of that, but it'll stir your thoughts for just a minute. There's a king in the Bible. He's actually a soldier at the time in the army, which he's used as military police as well to guard certain areas or certain parts of the country. He becomes the son-in-law of the king of Israel. He's known as a vicious warrior. You know, the warrior spirit. Everybody will know when I say his name who I'm talking about. His name's David. 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, Chronicles has some of the chronicles of his life. He is a bad dude. He kills, everybody knows the famous story of David and Goliath, right? He has been anointed by God because of King Saul's failures of integrity and loyalty. He has been anointed the new king of Israel, but he can't be put into that position yet. So King Saul is set out to kill him. The nation knows that he's the new king, but he finds himself having done nothing but be honorable, loyal, and faithful to his king and to his God in a cave. He's hiding out in a damp, wet, nasty, you know what goes into caves, right? Bats, spiders, snakes, everything you and I don't want to sleep with. And he's in this cave, and he's hiding from the man he served. Now, I think at some point he would say, well, Lord, I don't feel much like a king. I mean, you anointed me. Did you anoint my kingdom to be a dark, damp cave where I'm hiding from my... And he's literally hiding from his father-in-law. He wants him dead. He goes to visit him. He throws a javelin at him from across the room twice, sticks it in the wall right by his head. He barely escapes death. The king's son is his covenant friend, part of the brotherhood. He's a great warrior too. While he's in that cave, all these men that hear about where he's at go to join him in that cave. And the Bible says that there were three things about them. They were, these are the kind of recruits you want, right? Yeah. Disheartened, discouraged, and in debt. I mean, they're depressed.
Sure.
Yeah, send me all your recruits that are depressed, don't want to do this job, and don't have any money, right? No, that's not what you're looking for. It's not the personality profile you look for.
That's how many of our existing officers feel after
That's
the last 4 years.
That's how they feel after the last 4 years.
Of course.
And then it makes this statement. They go to the cave with him, and then it says, and they made him their captain. He didn't make himself their captain. He didn't appoint himself to the rank. He didn't say, well, boys, I've killed more than y'all have. Well, boys, I'm the greatest soldier. No. They made him their captain. And I think in great leadership, you can have a title, but it's when the people that are around you watch you lift up one of their rank and file in your arms. I think one of the things that endures you to the heart of these men and women that have served alongside of you is knowing that even in the deepest pain and a struggle for your own faith and a moment in your life when you have the biggest why question, that you grab a hold of one of their loved, blessed and loved, and you step in and you do it anyway, even when you're battling through. That book is full of men and women who did it anyway. Yeah. Who did it anyway. I got questions. I ask why. I struggle sometimes. I hold these little babies in my arms or with their parents while they're having to unplug them or while they're having to... I bury these wonderful, fine men and women who give and sacrifice their life and ask why. Yeah. But then you do it anyway, and then you come back to God, and he says, you're on a planet that has fallen, and I'm going to redeem. You're in creation. The Bible says the earth groans for the coming of the Lord. The earth itself. Mm. He's not just going to restore you and me as human beings and take us to heaven forever. He's going to restore all of creation, because the least the enemy has, and the reason things are getting worse and worse, is because our enemy, Satan, death, it knows it only has a short time. You know, Satan's not the only one that's going to be cast into the lake of fire. The Bible says death will be as well. Mm-hmm. So every death that's ever tormented me and you, every death that's ever made us say, why? Why could this happen? Why do bad things happen to good people? That spirit of death is going to be cast and tormented for all of eternity. That's what helps me with my why sometimes. Because I know that get even is coming. No. Judgment is coming to the spirit of death. It's not going to be forever. Judgment's coming to the spirit of death and to every vile, wicked thing that you and I have ever seen, experienced, or dealt with where it's taken a toll on human life.
Yeah. Well, I think
Never
for
heard of
us,
this before.
Take you to the scriptures.
I think for us, when you're confronted with the here and now and the tragedy of the here and now, you know, like you said, the emotion that comes on, being a part of burying officers, line of duty deaths and whatnot, you know, in a position like yours, you're the one that has to present the flag to those families and look them in the eyes. I would have to believe that process would cut you so deeply and have to do it so many times.
Yeah. It's overwhelming.
I don't know how you would be able to do that without some kind of a faith that there is some overriding purpose in all of this.
Yeah.
It is very easy to say, what's the purpose in this loss? What's your purpose in taking this outstanding trooper or officer or deputy from us? But you have to believe that there's something beyond that.
Oh, I do.
Something bigger, right?
Yeah, there's a higher view.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't do that if you did.
You couldn't. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that. And so the strength that it takes to be able to do that in that moment, I think is important for viewers to grasp, is that even in struggling with your faith, it's still your faith that carries you through.
There's no question,
Yeah.
Rick. Well said.
Right?
And it sharpens
Yeah.
it. It actually
Yeah.
sharpens it. It makes it stronger.
You know, and I think part of the burden here is those significant events are significant events, and we will always remember them.
Yep.
But it's also my fear and worry of the burden that these folks carry every single day.
And knowing it's not going to get lighter or easier.
We're at a crossroads, I think, in our profession and the way we treat each other as human beings.
And wouldn't it be nice if we had an Etch-a-Sketch where we could shake that thing and have a clean slate, so to speak, in some of these issues?
I hate to be so simple.
Yeah.
But it's true. If we don't,
Yeah.
we're just going to shade the lines.
We're going to shade the lines.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I would share with you too, and I just pulled it back up in my Bible, that I fall back on a lot in those moments. I wasn't expecting it, and it's so powerful that you shared that. To still struggle with faith with what we're confronted with. You know, then I think that's what's happening in our profession. There's a great shaking that is occurring, like you were talking about with that etch and sketch, that's occurring within our profession. We're seeing it all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I share it with you times that I come back from this city or that city, and we've had these powerful moves of God and how hungry and thirsty our officers are for faith. That's why we keep saying faith now more than ever.
Yeah.
But I go back to Joshua 1:9, and I think it's such a powerful thing that to keep replanting into ourselves. And it says this, it says, have I not commanded you? This is God talking. So you would appreciate this as a superintendent. If you give a command, do you expect people to follow it? It's not even up for question, right?
Right.
This is God, the creator of the cosmos, telling all of us and you as a superintendent, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened or discouraged, and do not be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And the biggest thing in all of that, to your point and to Chris's point, is as bad as it is right now, he's coming back. And we know how this ends. And I think what I hear and see in you and what you've shared is that there is power even in the struggle. There's power in the questions, and then there's power in standing firm in the faith, even with all the questions.
Right.
God's a big boy. He can handle them, and he welcomes the questions. But it's us keeping our hearts open to hearing his responses in that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the real key in all of this. And I think it's such a powerful thing for folks to be able to see and witness and know that they're not alone in thinking those things and having those struggles. What I see is within the profession, we're at this fundamental fork in the road. And are we going to go on trying to have this kind of worldly perspective on what we do, where we keep our faith and our God and all these things away from us because we think we're supposed to? Or are we going to turn to God in this moment and lead the way? See, I think when communities see officers, superintendents, leaders in the profession saying, I don't know of any other way, folks, but with God for us to turn this thing around, then they will start to want to know more about him, and they'll start turning more to him. And that's why I believe the revival in this profession is what's going to save our country and hopefully our world until he comes back. Hold it all together the best that we can with his help. So I just kind of like to close out by asking you, you've been watching the podcast. You've been wrestling with these issues. What do you think about what we're doing here with the podcast and the discussions that we have?
I think the thing that word that comes to my mind is vulnerability that you're able to bring out from people. I never in a million years thought I'd be talking about this today.
That's why we don't script it, because if you do, you don't.
Yeah, you're just going to wing it.
Is that an oxymoron?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that was a Yogi Berra, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But I can't wait to hear what you both have said over the last 4 or 5 minutes. Yeah. So I think the vulnerability, the standing at a podium, giving a presentation and a speech is over.
Mm.
Get away from the podium,
Yeah.
And get vulnerable, get uncomfortable in conversations. And you both have given me a whole lot to think about as I leave here today. And
That's awesome.
I'm really, really appreciative. I've never heard the why explained that way, and I've never heard or read that scripture.
Do you think there's value in not just young officers, but seasoned officers watching and having these discussions as well?
Oh my gosh! I hope we talk about things they're thinking about,
I hope we did too.
or that maybe it might just strike a chord, and understand that it's.
I've only been around for about 28 years. You've been doing this 40, but I don't ever recall seeing or hearing these types of discussions in the profession.
Never. Oh no.
Yeah.
No, a department psychologist, they think about firing
Yeah.
you or putting you off someplace where you don't have to talk about that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We've come a long
It's
way.
nuts.
The good news is we've come a long way.
And to have the courage and boldness to talk about faith and the need for it.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I said I was going to give you this scripture, so I'm going to read this scripture for you.
Okay.
It's in Revelation, chapter 20. And I won't read the whole thing because of the time. But chapter 20, and verse 11 says, I saw the great white throne and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and heaven fled away. And there was found no place for them. I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God. And the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. The dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. The sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged, every man according to their works. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. So every officer, I want you to look at me, every one of you watching today that have experienced the great pain of death. Maybe you're an officer that had to be involved in an officer-involved shooting that took a life. I want you to understand death has touched this profession over and over and over again. But God has a plan for death. God will enact final vigilance and judgment and vengeance upon death. Every death you've witnessed, every death you've seen, every person that you have held in your arms, every officer, every child, every little grandma that you were on the scene with, every death will have vengeance done against it by God himself, and that spirit of death will be cast into a lake of fire, never, ever, ever to be loosed again on humanity. Cast into the lake of fire, this is the second death, and whosoever was not found written in the book of life, it's a very important book to be written in, by the way.
That's right.
Was cast into the lake of fire. So there, my friend, that is what happens to every officer you've lost. The spirit of death that took that officer, God's going to deal with and judge. And it will be judged for eternity.
Yeah.
All of eternity. While you and I, because of our walk with God, get to enjoy eternity in total life. That's our vengeance. That's why we serve. That's why I preach, and that's why you police.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and so
Awesome.
thank you for being here. Thank you for
That's awesome.
a life of service.
Thank you very much.
Few can say they've done that, and the ones who do, we look at their example. And so I want to thank you for your example. I want to go back to where we began. Most importantly, I want to thank you for just being my friend and what that means. Few people know you learn the power of the words, "I'm on my way."
Yeah.
Few people appreciate that until in your moment of need, you hear somebody else say that, a friend, "I'm on my way." And I think about how many times we have each said that to one another.
Yeah.
And it never loses its power. So Chris gave you a challenge coin when we started. I'm going to give you one of these wooden crosses that you know so well, that you've seen many, many people receive. But I want to give it to you today because I think it's of great value for you to have this. And I say this to everybody. You talked about the humanity that we need to get back to. The power of the cross, beyond the fact that Christ settled everything there, is that it also is a reminder to us that at the foot of the cross, we all have the same need. We're all in need of a Savior.
Yeah.
Someone bigger than ourselves, just as you talked about. But the part that a lot of people forget is it also shows us that we also have the same value to God, regardless of what we look like, where we came from, what we've been through.
That's right.
He created all of us, and He is without imperfection. So He makes no mistakes. Even when we think mistakes have occurred, there are no mistakes, as we talked about, of the head or the heart. There are none with God, the Creator. And the other powerful thing in this, and the reason why I really want you to have it, is because when you look at it, I want you to remember that Jesus, who died on this cross and made the ultimate sacrifice that modeled it for all of us, especially in law enforcement, He did that, but He's not on there anymore. He came off of that cross.
That's right.
And He rose again. And it's a great reminder that in Him we have victory and He's coming back. And there is what you talked about we all need, which is hope. So have that, treasure it. Thousands of those have been given out. But I think the power in that will be somebody will see it and say, "Why do you have that?" And then you can pay it forward and tell them the same story and why. Thank you, man. It's been a great time hanging out with you.
Our superintendent, Doug Carter of the Indianapolis State Police. What a great time we've had today. Thank you so much for coming.
I got more out of this than either one of you.
I don't know. Well, I got some good stuff. We might wrestle over it.
Finish strong, my friend. Finish strong.
Thank you very much for being on here with us today, and thank you guys for watching. Hit the bell, subscribe, send it out to people. Let them know what a great opportunity they have for some hope and faith and strength in their life as police officers. We love you. There's nothing you can do about that. And we will see you real soon. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Rick and I trust that you heard something that will help your life. And if you believe that it would help others, please make sure and share. Like and subscribe and hit that bell so that you can be notified when the next podcast is available. God bless you, and we'll see you soon.